Are Grudge Settler Dwarf units any good in patch 5.0? I've wanted to go through the Grudge Settler units as a big single package for a simple reason. Most of them have special features, but their base stats don't actually change. Please keep in mind that the costs are adjusted by the Age of Reckoning system, and that any red line, text, and Lord or Hero bonuses fully apply, but nonetheless, let's take a slow march through the units. Yeah, no surprise here, but a lot of you didn't think regular longbeards with great weapons were any good at all because hammerers exist. So what's the deal here? Well, remember how I said two bad longbeards with great weapons didn't have charge defense versus all? These ones do. That means your elite killy infantry with high charge bonus, either through campaign events or faction skills and techs, or both, like say Chosen, Plague Monks, yada yada, their charge bonus is stopped cold. Now, this is particularly important if you are the Malachi-level madman who actually researched Iron Veterans and got Great Weapons variants Charge Reflection, because now that actually matters against infantry opponents, no matter how strong or weak the actual charge is. That's double damage during the length of the charge bonus. And no, I haven't tested that versus Glorious Charge. Cetra wanted to be paid in preserved organs, and I said, nah. These longbeards get one other thing, Guardian, meaning they fork over 15% physical resistance to lords and heroes in a 35-meter radius. It's interesting, I'll give it that. So if you recruit one of these to hold a line or the flank, remember that your characters might benefit from being in the vicinity. This variant comes with bonus versus infantry of 8 for their melee attacks and their ranged attacks, meaning the armor piercing is a lot more likely to connect in melee and the crossbow bolts opponents. This makes them something like a reverse huntsman unit, a lot better at wiping out masked infantry. Oh, shields you ask? Their missiles also gain shield breaker, so minus 24% to block their shots and the shots of other units. This means there is almost no ranged dwarf force they do not improve. And one of the exceptions to that is dealt with next. What changed here is that range increased to 120, calibration distance to 60 as an extension, both senses I suppose, and the flames gain contact effect flammable, so the target takes 20% more damage from flaming damage attacks all sources thereof. This means that normal Iron Drakes, Brimstone guns, flame cannons, they all benefit directly. And of course, this Iron Drake unit too. So it's not just a self buff, it's an everyone buff, if they're rocking flame. This works with any potential allied troops too, but I don't know how much Iron Drakes even need the help, you know? There's only one thing that changed. The Grudge Settler variant has Sunder Armor as a contact effect. On the other hand, that is so awesome it's hard to put into words. But I will manage. It's very awesome because Slayers, as in not Giant Slayers, are heavily tilted toward base damage, even if they're attacking large targets with their 24 bonus versus large. Let's not ignore how this helps other friendly units like Horrorlers, Longbeards, and lots of others. Okay, you're already asking, how do you make Hammerers better? Well, there's one small thing and one big thing. The small thing is Frostbite, as a contact effect, which makes it hard for cycle charging enemies to pull out. The other is Frenzy, which is ridiculous, and getting it quote-unquote for free like this is really strong. More melee attack is as unfair as it gets with dwarfs. How do you make Grudge Throwers better? What happens when you get to Grudge Squared? Well, first you give the projectiles monstrous impact, shaving 60% of the victim's speed, making them more vulnerable to anything being thrown, catapulted, or blasted at them. Second, the shots gain a shrapnel effect that adds to the damage they do. So, this is unlisted on the card. What is listed is base 40 and AP 180 on a direct hit, 60 base and 100 AP explosion damage in a 4-meter detonation radius, which is a good bit better than the base version, with calibration area 50 instead of 80, meaning somewhat tighter groupings. In other words, it's a straight upgrade plus extra mid-air burst damage. I will gladly take it. Okay, how do we make this unit even more ridiculous then? Here, we get an actual increase in cost, 1200 gold and 300 upkeep. Health goes up to 6,276, armor to 125, leadership to 85, melee attack 20 with an attack interval of 4, melee defense 27, weapon strength lower with lighter weapons for some reason, charge bonus 6, yay. Range is still 240, missile damage is still flaming and has burnt morale debuff, direct hit 54 base and 30 armor piercing, which is a buff, explosion same 5 meter radius, small increase to the damage, 15 base, 6 AP. The rest of the stats like reload time are the same, but the unit also has shrapnel projectiles, meaning flaming shrapnel, that will burst and do the unlisted effects, creating flaming rain down at the target. Point is, it's another straight buff, but with a slight cost increase, and the unit is far harder to actually crush close in now, so that's great when getting those last few shots into a goblin horde. There's a large cost increase to 1000 recruit and 250 upkeep, but most stats are the same. What's not the same is the ranged weapon. Range 170, missile damage 137 on paper, and flaming attack. Keep this in mind regarding the flammable debuff. I forgot it applied to here earlier. Missile damage is 50 per impact, 188 armor piercing, with a bonus versus large of 50 that applies only 2 damage, and is split along this heavy AP ratio. There's a small 2 meter explosion radius, 10 base and 25 AP damage. Well, that's consolation if you're forced to target infantry. The problem here is the reload time of 20. Total accuracy is 20 default and increases with rank. Calibration distance is only 85, but calibration area is 3, more than good enough to hit the broadside of a Dread Saurian. But that reload time hurts. The way to get the most out of the unit is to use it early and often, exploiting the range where you can and or must, and keeping its 12 copters alive long enough to use more of that ammo. They'll use it up quite slowly, but reload time reduction is only really for rank 7 copters, or with a master engineer using the ballistics calibration skill, or the best scenario, use Malachi. Barring that, they'll hit harder, they'll have more ammo, but it's way overkill against even Chosen. I mean, you'll happily kill a few more Chosen with it, but you want to hammer them trolls, if at all possible. And use this to help zero out your worst foes like Wolfric on a Mammoth, Giants, Dragons, those sorts of things. And it helps. Just keep in mind it is still a skirmish unit and it needs time to build this damage. And while it's great and all, don't expect a single unit to demolish elite opponents unaided. 2 is more like it. Well, that's my summary of Grudge Settler units. This system provides dwarfs with a way to get around recruitment limits holding them back, and while the money you have to fork out for them varies, the possibility of either a rapid defense or snowballing when crushing a hated foe definitely has its place. The common theme is that these units make other units of their own type, or of closely related types, better around them. This means there is simply nothing bad about using them. Even if you can't expand your number of armies economically, I think it's well worth dipping into pools about to get an extra dose of units and using them with your regular forces or even replacing them to a large degree. Just make sure not to completely wreck synergy either. Unless you're a very passive player, they shouldn't be costing you more than the regular versions, so the downside is difficult to find. Take care, and don't get mad unless you're Malachi. Get even!